Steelers star reveals truth on a major change. Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to make some huge changes to their offense with the arrival of Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. A key player on the offensive line is switching positions. How will he fare in Pittsburgh this upcoming season? My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we will get you the latest Pittsburgh Steelers news. Before we get into it, if you guys aren't already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Only 13% of our current viewers are actually currently subscribed. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are making a huge change on offense. Obviously, Broderick Jones is making a position change. He's going back to left tackle. But, this is a guy that has been moved around since getting drafted into the league a few years ago in the first round. But obviously, Broderick has said that he needs a few more weeks at the left tackle position before he can really feel comfortable at the position. Like I said, he did admit that he does need a few more weeks as the Pittsburgh Steelers look to transition him back to left tackle. With the injury of Troy Fontanu last year, he did have to step in and move to that right tackle position where Dan Moore, he was our guy at left tackle. Obviously, Titans just tossed an absurd amount of money at him this offseason and, locked him down to a big deal. So he's going to the Titans in Tennessee, and Broderick Jones switches to that left tackle position, and Troy Fontanu is looking to just slide in to that right tackle position where he was supposed to play last year as a first-round rookie. But, after practice at mandatory minicamp, Broderick Jones was asked by reporters to share how offseason practices have been going. And, this was his response. And he said, "I think it went as good as it can go. With everything going on, with me moving from back to left tackle from right tackle, I still got a couple more weeks to hone in on my skills and continue to develop on the left side. And, as he comes into training camp, as the Steelers get the pads on and get things actually going." But, Broderick Jones is a guy that I think has a lot of potential in this league. He obviously has been moved around since coming into the league, but he did drop 20 pounds this offseason. So he's coming in a little leaner, a little faster, and, this is always good for an offensive lineman. Maybe shed a few pounds, get a little quicker on your feet, and, just help you stop guys like Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Aiden Hutchinson, Nick Bosa. He's never going to be playing the best, TJ Watt, but, in order to stop those crazy fast pass rushers, you're going to need some speed. And, Broderick Jones was a guy that coming out of college, he's a big dude. He is very physical, but, when you're playing at a college like Georgia, you're not playing, not every game is going to be against NFL level talent, so Jones could have kind of just relied on that physical ability that he had, that physical stature, and just kind of move guys with just that strength. But, when you do that and when you get used to just being the biggest guy on the field, it really limits you in the amount of technique that you can actually develop and, the amount of technique that you really use in your game, because obviously he's just relying on just being the biggest and strongest dude, just pushing guys to the ground, just being a beast. But when you get to the NFL, obviously guys are sometimes your size, but most of the time, 99% of the time, they're much faster than you on that defensive side of the ball. And you're going to be facing the top guys in the world. Myles Garrett is a guy that, coming into every game, that guy has a chance to, wreak havoc and totally change a game, and obviously we have a guy in Pittsburgh at the moment, TJ Watt, who's just the same, but these guys are freaks. These guys can change games in a matter of 1 to 2 plays, cause a turnover, cause a touchdown, so you really need to get ready for guys like that in this league, It's kind of crazy to believe that, the Steelers do have to play probably the second best pass rusher in the NFL twice a year. Obviously the Browns are not the best team in the NFL, but they do have a great talent in Myles Garrett on that defensive line. But going back to Broderick Jones, I really think he's going to flourish from this switch back to left tackle. He's finally going to be in his true position where he was really drafted to play. And it's going to also allow a guy like Troy Fontanu to finally also get a start at the position he was drafted to play and really show why We spent a first round pick on both these tackles. It's crazy to say that at this moment, just going in the season and seeing how they already have turned out. But, you can't give up on these guys. They are still very young. And this is a huge season to prove why they were selected in that first round, because we're going to have a great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. I said it, a great quarterback, an experienced quarterback, and a guy who's going to be able to throw the ball. But it's really going to come down to the guys up front, those big dudes, and how well they can protect the quarterback. Because, if we look at the top teams in the NFL, I hate to say it, but you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions, former Super Bowl champions already, it all starts up front. Both their offensive and defensive lines are insane. On offense, they got guys like Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson. They got a ton of great guys on that offensive line. Mailata, all these huge offensive linemen who are insane, who are probably the best offensive line in the NFL. And then we go to their defensive line, who's got guys like Jalen Carter. They had Brandon Graham before he retired. Jordan Davis. They got a ton of great talent up front and on the offensive line. And Steelers did add Derek Harmon this offseason. He's probably going to start on day one. He's already starting at minicamp practice. So he will probably go at that number one defensive end or a defensive tackle position, wherever they really want to fit him. We're already getting some pieces on the defensive line, trying to fortify that defensive line. His buddy Yaha Black coming out of Iowa, another big dude, comparable to, I guess, Jordan Davis, just two massive dudes that are going to clog up the middle, help take those double teams on, But I don't know. Broderick Jones really has to step up. I really think at this position change, he's going to do very well. Like I said, that's the position he was drafted to play at that left tackle position. And obviously, he lost some pounds. He's going to know the playbook another year more. And he's got a lot of learning points from last year. We go back, we look at all the penalties he had, all the holdings, all the dumb mistakes he made in his first 2 years. But if we do look back to Broderick here, when he did have to play, he played very well. So I do think this guy is going to step up this year. He's going into his third year. This is a big year for him. It's really going to be a decision whether or not the Steelers are going to move on from him potentially or, stick with him and give him that second contract. It's a big year for him. It really just comes down to whether or not this guy's going to raise to occasion at that left tackle position. Obviously, that's one of the hardest positions in football. You're protecting the quarterback's blind side. You're going up against 99% of the time the team's best pass rusher. So it's really up to Broderick Jones to just show he's a capable starter, and he's worth that first-round pick that the Rooney family, Coach Tomlin, and Omar selected him with. So unfortunately, that's all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers.